In this video, we'll be going over the Chapter 7 homework quiz, everyone's favorite one. So we'll start with the first question about the stocks, right? So in this one, you want to modify the HTML by adding appropriately valued class attributes, then create CSS rules with class selectors so that all of the gains get styled with green text and losses with red text, right? So all stocks with no change and other text should appear in the browser's default style, which means we don't need to do anything with that. And if the gain or loss is very large, greater than 1,000 or less than a negative 1,000, make it bold, right? So the HTML, right now, this is what it generates for the web page. And we now want to figure out what we're going to do here in terms of adding it to each of these list items to classes so that we can make the losses red, the gains green, and the big losses and the big gains both bold, right? So assuming that gains will be styled the same way, losses will be styled the same way, and big gains and big losses will always both be strongly emphasized in the same way for the foreseeable future, which of the following would be the best way to set up the HTML for this problem for readability and maintainability? Okay, so gains are going to be one style, right? So we'll give each of those that are gains, we'll just make them in the gain class, right? So Google was positive here in this example. Red Hat was also positive. Microsoft was also positive, right? And similarly, we would do this for losses, right? So we give each one that went down in price, we'd give it a class of loss here, right? So there are two stocks like that. And then finally, we want to put in bold the ones that were big losses or big gains. So that would be, we'll just make them both in a big class here, right? So that's a big loss here. It's more than negative 1,000, or you could say less than negative 1,000, right? It lost more than 1,000. And similarly, this would also be in the not bug class, big class, but a big gain, right? And it doesn't actually matter whether you do gain big or big gain, right? As long as you just have a space between the two. So this would be the best way to do it, assuming that the gains and the losses were always going to have the same styling in terms of they, let's say, both be bold or both underlined. Then we would make them both belong to the big class, right? So when we look at these options, you can see that that is going to be option number 2. Okay, and again, just the same thing here, but now we're doing with the CSS. So we're importing the stocks.css file. So this didn't change anything because we didn't actually style this, any of these classes, right? So to style classes, we would use the dot, right? And so we could do dot big, right, for font weight of bold, and dot gain, we could say the color is green, or I'll just be consistent with the right answer in the notes, so I'll do the loss class first, right? It's color of red, right? So if we press play, you can see the bold ones are the ones that went up or down by a lot, and we have Christmas colors here, red and green, but not good styling, actually, as we talked about for red-green color blindness is the most common one. So hopefully that doesn't apply to you here, but you can see here that Apple is a big loss here, but specifically a loss, so it's in red, and Google and Red Hat are both in green. Yes, Red Hat is in green because it went up, and similarly Microsoft went up, so it's in green, and IBM is loss, so it's red, right? So that's when you look at these possibilities, that's option number 2. I just want to briefly talk about some of these other ones, right, is the fact that we could have done things like, we could have done like a big loss and a big gain, right? That would have worked as well. So if we just did something like this, right, if we just did big loss, big gain, or big gain, big loss, and then we changed it in the HTML, so the corresponding ones we had, instead of big loss, we could have just done big loss and big gain, right? Still works. You still have this in bold and you still have this in bold. But the problem is this is less maintainable, because if we decide one day, oh, you know what, the big gains, or actually just any big gains and big losses should be underlined, we would change this to text decoration underline, but then we would have to remember to do the same for the losses as well, right? And for a simple example like this, where one is right underneath the next, it's very easy to just make the change. But remember that this class is about what you would do in industry, and if you had a much larger example, and these were, let's say, in different places or something like that, these particular rules, or you just had like multiple ones, you didn't just have like big gain and big loss, but you had like other properties as well, this would be really bad for maintaining, because you would, it's possible you would forget where one was, or even if you didn't forget, maybe the next person who's maintaining it would forget. So this is just not a good thing to do, even though it works, right? So again, if you expect that the styles are going to be the same, meaning that if one goes to underline, one big goes to underline, like let's say a big gain, then the big loss would as well, then you should do what we did in number 2 here, right? So you should just go back to what we had there, right? And then we would obviously just get rid of that, right? So again, looks the same, but it is more maintainable, because now we could just change this one as opposed to 2 places if something changes, right? And so some of the other ones, when you look at them, just wouldn't work, right? So if you did like a list item having a font way to bold, right, then all of the all the list items would be bold, right? And if you did something like this one, big in the big class and the gain class, the color was green and the font weight was bold, that wouldn't work, because then you're saying that all ones belonging to the gain class should have a font weight of bold, right? So that's not going to work here. And then the last one was have a big 1 and a big 2, have a font weight of bold, loss 1, loss 2, color of red, gain 1, gain 2, and gain 3, color of green. We weren't doing anything like this. So we weren't using this one. Okay, so the correct answer there was 2. Okay, so everyone's favorite question here, or favorite questions. Suppose you're given the following requirements for the link colors on a website. The links to the main page should be green every day of the year. The links to the Malloy pages here should be maroon every day of the year. But on St. Patrick's Day only, every other link should be green. And on every day that is not St. Patrick's Day, every other link should be the default color, which won't be green. So most likely just default color is blue, right? Or if it's visited, it would be purple. So suppose that every page shares a link to the same external style sheet. And finally, suppose you're putting together the page on St. Patrick's Day. So for each possibility, determine whether it meets requirements 1 to 3, and if so, match it to the changes that would be sufficient for meeting requirements 1, 2, and 4 on the next day, right? So right now, it's like the day before St. Patrick's Day, and we need to change all of these other links to green. So the question is, what is the best way to go about this? Or if we're doing this every St. Patrick's Day, what would be the best way to go about this from a maintainability standpoint? And to just get an idea, we'll talk about different ways that you could potentially achieve this, and we'll see the changes that we would have to make for that day, right? We'd have to see the changes that we'd have to make for St. Patrick's Day, right? And then you also think about the changes that you'd have to make after it's no longer St. Patrick's Day, and you'd wind up having to change everything back to the original colors. Okay, so these are the different possibilities, and we're going to just start with the first one here. So the first one here, we decided to put all of the main page and other links in the green class. And then we gave that a color of green. And for the Malloy link classes, or Malloy link class, we gave that a color of maroon. So all the Malloy links went into the Malloy link class. Right? So this will satisfy the requirements of St. Patrick's Day, right? You can see this here. So, okay, so you can see the main pages here are all green. The Malloys are maroon, and the others are green, right? Because we said both the Malloy links, which are maroon here, Malloy links should be maroon, and anything in the green class should be green, right? And we put the main and the other links in the green class. Okay, so that does meet the requirements for St. Patrick's Day, but what do we have to do now the next day, right? So this turned out to be very bad for maintenance because now we need to pick out all the ones that were in the other links, right? And get rid of them, right, from the green class. We have to remove them from the green class. And we have ones that are in the main page that are in the green class. So we can't just remove all of the links here from the green class that are already in the green class. We have to pick out the ones in the other, right? So this is the one that meets the requirement in the HTML remove every other link from the green class, but it's not a great option here. So it's what we have to do, but that is not desirable by any stretch of the imagination. So here there are only 3 links, but we can imagine that they wouldn't just be nicely ordered like this. And if the HTML was a little different in each side, it would just be a little bit of a headache to change them all, right? So now they're all blue. Let's look at some of the other options. The other option was in the CSS, add the following rule: a.green, color default, in which you replace default with the default color. Well, if we had done that, right, then all of the ones that were in the green class, right? So I'll just put these back into the green class, right? All of them would become blue, right? Because again, we haven't separated them, right? So now they're just all blue. In the CSS, add the following rule, or that's the one I just said. In the HTML, remove the rule selecting elements belonging to the green class. Well, if we removed it for all of them, then they would all turn blue anyway, right? So that would essentially do the same thing, right? And the Malloy ones stay maroon. Okay, so not a great way to maintain it, but it does meet the requirements for St. Patrick's Day. And so again, this is actually telling you that when you set this up, if you don't expect, so over here, like going back to this question, if you don't expect that all of these would be styled the same on every day, meaning that all the other links and Malloy links would be styled the same way, in this case green, then you shouldn't put them in the same class, right? Because even though it accomplishes what you want, when you need to make changes, you need to pick out the ones that are going to change from that class and leave it for the others. So just very bad. Okay, I don't want to belabor the point. Okay, so next situation here. So this is part B, question 6. Okay, so this is really question 4. I mean, these numbers were off. But anyway, in this one, what we did was we took all the Malloy links and put them in the Malloy link class and did Malloy link color maroon, and we just made all the links a color of green. Now this does work, as you can see. And you can see I even wrote it in the CSS. I put the, well, this was not the question here. This was here. I even put the A after, right? The rule with the A, specifying the anchor element. So you could say, well, these rules conflict, right? And this one comes later. But if you listen to the chapter 10 homework quiz first, and if you remember what we discussed in class, even though these rules conflict and this one comes later, classes are more specific than elements. So this one wins for the Malloy links. So this works out. So the Malloy links will all be maroon and all the other links will wind up being green, right? So how do we fix this when it's no longer St. Patrick's Day? So first of all, it does meet the requirements for St. Patrick's Day. So in the HTML, add every main page link to the main link class, and in the CSS, change the rule selecting A elements to select elements belonging to the main link class instead. So that works, right? We could just do it like this, and then only add the ones that are in that are ones to the main page, right? We could just make that go to the belong to the main link class, right? So that that works, right? So we can just do that here. I mean, you could do this on your own, but just showing that it works. Right? You see all the main pages turn green, right? So that's good. The other possibility was from the CSS, remove the rule selecting anchor elements. Well, if you just did that, then all the links there would just turn blue, right? So that wouldn't work. All the non-Malloy links, that is. And then the last one, in the CSS, change the rule selecting A elements to the rule A color default, where default is replaced with the default color. So that would just make this A color blue. That has the same effect as just removing this altogether. All the other ones would turn blue. So, I mean, this isn't great because we have to add them to classes in the HTML. But, I mean, if you think about it, before, when we set it up for St. Patrick's Day, at least we didn't add all of these to a green class and then have to revert those changes, right? So we had it all set up at least. All we did was add the Malloy links to the color maroon, if that weren't already the case, which it probably was the case, actually, because, again, if we wanted the Malloy links to be maroon all the time, it was probably already set up that way. So if we just made this one change for St. Patrick's Day, right, that's not too bad because then we can undo it very easily. Of course, if these other links were green, we didn't have this. We had to have changed something else ahead of time. So that was probably bad from that standpoint. But I guess if we were setting up the site for the first time, right, and we made all these links green for the first time, and then we're just going to fix it later where we put the main link, the main page links in the main link class, it's not so bad, right? And certainly better, as I said, than the previous one. Okay, so let's talk about the next one. In the next one here, we have all the main link class, all the elements that go to the main page in the main link class, all the ones that point to Malloy, we have in the Malloy link class, and then we have main link is color green, Malloy link is color maroon, and A is color green, right? So clearly this is going to make all of the non-Malloy links green, right? The Malloy link class is going to overrule or override the one for the A, for the ones that it pertains to, mainly the Malloy links. Right? So this also works, and you can see that here. Right? But now let's think about how easy it is to then go back to the where just the other links were then blue, right? So all we would have to do then would be to remove the CSS rule, right? So the main links would stay green, the Malloy links would stay maroon, and then all other links would go back to their default color. So this is perfect from a maintenance standpoint, right? Once we set this up where we put all of the ones in the main link class in green, we made them all green. So we put all the main links in the main link class, and we styled it green, and all the Malloy links in the Malloy link class, and we styled it maroon. Now we have the situation where we just remove this when it's not St. Patrick's Day and put it back in when it is St. Patrick's Day. So again, you see this duplication, which we talk about as usually being bad, a color green and color green. But the point is that we don't always expect these to be the same. They're not going to be the same in general, right? On St. Patrick's Day they are, but on every other day they're not. So this is a case where we would want to have that duplication, and it's, as I said, perfect from a maintenance standpoint. So the easy thing is from the CSS, remove the rule selecting the elements belonging to not the main link class, but from the anchor elements, right? If we did for the main link class, then they would all still be green, right? You have a color green. All the ones, I should say, that are not Malloy links. Okay. So the next one here, we have all the ones in the main link class, we give St. Patrick's class, and we give the Malloy link class here, right? So we have main link, color green, St. Patrick's, color green, Malloy link, color maroon, right? So this also meets the requirements of St. Patrick's Day, right? The main pages are green, the Malloys are maroon, and all the others are green as well. But you can imagine then when it's no longer St. Patrick's Day, I mean, it's not really a problem. I mean, it's just, we can just remove this, and if we remove that rule, then things in the St. Patrick's class, well, we didn't specify what color they should be, so they'll go back to the default color. But you could imagine that this isn't great, because how much work did it take you to put everything in the St. Patrick's class when you could have just done like what we had done before, which is just put it A, color green, right? And then, you know, are you going to, when you do future links, are you also going to put it in the St. Patrick's class? It doesn't make sense to do that for this situation. Nevertheless, it is easy to fix when it's no longer St. Patrick's Day, right? And that's just remove this rule. So it does meet the requirements for St. Patrick's Day. From the CSS, remove the rule selecting the elements belonging to the main link class. No, because we still want them to be green. From the CSS, remove the rule selecting the elements belonging to the St. Patrick's class. Yes, that's what I just said. And the other possibility is to add the rule A, color default, where default is replaced with the default color. That won't work because, again, St. Patrick's is, you're specifying it with a class, so that would take precedence and they would still be green, right? Okay, so final one for St. Patrick's Day here. So in this one, we, in the CSS, add the following rules. We say dot green, color green, and a color maroon, right? So we put the main page and the other in the green class, and we make the default color for all other links maroon. So that works, right? Because everything that belongs to the green class, this is going to take precedence, and the ones that don't belong to the green class are going to be the Malloy links. So that works for St. Patrick's Day. Okay, so let's think about what we would do, and I guess I'll just run this again. Let's see what we would do when it's no longer St. Patrick's Day. Okay, so from the CSS, remove the rule selecting the anchor elements. So if we do that, then what's going to happen to the Malloy links, right? They're no longer going to be maroon. They're going to be blue or purple if they've been clicked on. Okay, in the HTML, remove every other link from the green class. So if we remove every other link from the green class, then those will be maroon, right? So that doesn't work, right? Because we remove all the other links, then these are going to be maroon. This rule is then going to apply, right? This one's no longer going to override. So the next one, from the CSS, remove the rule selecting elements belonging to the green class. Well, if we get rid of this, then all the links are going to become maroon. That doesn't work either. So what about this next one? In the CSS, add the following rule, a.green, color default, in which you replace default with the default color. So now once you did that, a.green, that takes precedence over this. So now all of the links in the green class, including those other links, are going to be, or sorry, including those main page links, are going to become blue. So that does not work, right? So the ones not in the green class, the Malloy links, would be still maroon, but all the other links would now be blue, including the main page, right? And again, this is the problem with putting two things that are not always going to be the same in the same class. That's bad from a maintenance standpoint. Okay, we said it does meet the requirements of St. Patrick's Day, so let's look at this one. In the HTML, add every Malloy link to the Malloy link class, and in the CSS, change the rule selecting A elements to select Malloy link elements instead, and add the rule A color default where default is replaced with the default color. Okay, so that's a mouthful here. So adding the rule A color default where default is replaced with the default color, right? That would make them blue if it's not overridden. But in the CSS, change the rule selecting A elements to select Malloy link elements instead, right? So we would make this Malloy link, right? We would add those Malloy links to the Malloy link class. So now those would be maroon. But now what we do is by doing A of color of blue, right? That's not going to change the other class, the other links, because green again takes precedence. So all of them, including the other links, will be still green. And I reiterate the fact that we once again have these two things in the same class, but they're not always going to be the same color in this case. So this is a case where we have none of the other choices, right? Okay, so we're finally done with the St. Patrick's question. Okay, so now we can go to more of this CSS precedence questions, these CSS precedence questions. So given the following HTML fragment, we have P class equals heavy light, Q class equals light. Is strong bold, or is it just a normal everyday oblique denizen, right, citizen here? That is the question. So we're looking at strong for each of those. So this is, if you saw chapter 10, like the pizza quiz, right? Maybe not as exciting, or maybe it is exciting, or why am I even getting excited about this stuff? I have no idea. But anyway, make this video more interesting, that you can laugh at how silly I'm being here. Imagine that you are now with all your friends here on Zoom, and having this party where you're going to just be playing poll, where I'm up in the front saying, polling you guys, asking what it's going to be. Is it going to be normal or is it going to be bold, right? And we have this fun class just like chapter 10, or you can just listen to the answers or do it on your own, which you probably will. Then, yeah, so just go and try to figure these out first on your own, right? And we'll try to do the dramatic suspense just at home. Okay, it took too much time with that. Anyway, so with these ones, you have the first one, you have p.light is the font weight of normal, and the q, so the quote, is a font weight of bold. So which one is it going to be? Okay, so Q is specifying the parent. P dot light means it has to be both a paragraph and has to belong to the light class, right? So it's going to be bold for this one, right? Because when you're looking at strong, nothing specifies the EM element. So you look up to the parent element. So nothing specifies whether it should be bold or normal there. So you look up to the parent, and that one says that the font weight should be bold, right? So it doesn't even get to this p dot light. So this again, this one has one class, this has 0 classes, but this wins by default because this one was never even considered, since it's a grandparent instead of a parent of the element you're looking at. So this one was bold. Okay, so the second one, p dot heavy, p dot light. So both of them are specifying this grandparent here. So which one wins? Is it font weight bold? Is it font weight normal? Right, well, we go through the situation again, no IDs, one class, one element, right? So first no IDs, okay, then you look at classes, these both have one class. So then you go to elements, these both have one element, so the tie goes to the later one, right? So this one winds up being normal. Okay. So how are you doing on this? Hopefully well so far. All right, and if you missed these two, well, we still have 4 more to go. So, okay, so the next one, 3, is dot heavy. Right? So that could apply to both the paragraph and the EM element, and Q dot heavy, which only applies to, well, none of them, right? Because this is Q dot heavy, which means that it has to be a quote and it has to belong to the heavy class, right? It's not a descendant selector where there's a space. So this easily wins. And again, don't get tripped up here by the fact and you say, oh, but this is one element and one class, and this is only one class, right? It's again because, so this should be more specific. It's again because this doesn't even specify any of these elements, so it will not win. It won't even be in contention. It'll be disqualified, right? So this one, you have the font weight is normal. Right? Of course, if there were a space there for this third one, Q space dot heavy, then you're saying look inside a quote and look for something that belongs to the heavy class, so then this would win, right? But without the space, it says it has to be both a quote and be in the heavy class. Okay, so the next one here, we have the heavy class is font weight bold, and EM element is font weight normal. So you know which one it is? Is it bold? Is it normal? We're about to find out. So the class here is heavy, right? So this specifies the element itself. Again, it also specifies this paragraph, but we look for the most direct one, right? Which is, in this case, the element itself. And this EM also specifies the element itself. So which one wins? Well, this is a class, and this is just an element. So when they do battle, the class is more specific and wins. So that one's going to be bold. All right, so 2 more. So in this one we have Q dot light, and the other one we have dot light. So a quote belonging to the light class, right? That's only this one, right? Versus something that belongs to the light class. Well, again, that specifies this and this. So we use the most immediate ancestor, which is the parent. So both of them specify this quote. They're both a parent, so they do battle to figure out which one's going to win. And this is more specific. This has one element and one class. This just has one class. So this winds up being bold. Okay, and finally, we have dot heavy and p dot heavy, right? So dot heavy right, could specify this or this, right? Whereas p.heavy, which seems more specific, could only specify this grandparent, right? So again, you're going to take the one that specifies the element itself, and so it's going to have a normal font weight, right? Okay, so the last few questions here, or more than, I don't know, we have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. So, but these are quick because they're true false. So it is generally better to link in the CSS from an external style sheet than to embed it in the style tags in the HTML. Yes, that is true. You want to separate structure and style. If you want to link in a common style sheet, right? Or if you link in a common, you want to have common styles across the website. So if you link in a common style sheet, then it could apply to all the pages, as opposed to if you just put the CSS in every single HTML page that you do, then when you want to make changes, which is constant, you're going to have to change them in all the places, and you have to remember, much worse to maintain. Okay, links to the CSS files should be put in the head to allow for progressive rendering, making the page appear to load faster, and that is also true, right? So if you put the CSS in the head, right, then you will have the CSS load first. Those files will load first. So you will, it won't be like trying to load CSS. It'll just appear to load faster. You can look more about, you can look this up more in this link here. Okay, adding a link to the CSS in the head makes sense because information about the web page is supposed to be there, and the style sheet defines the styles for the web page. Yes. The following CSS is syntactically correct: body background color white, font family sans serif. It might look like it's correct or look as if it's correct, but you are missing a semicolon here. So this is false. Because you're missing the semicolon, this will not even be applied to the body. So you need to remember the semicolons, and remember you could put it through the CSS validator to check. The next one, the following CSS is syntactically correct: font family sans serif in a paragraph, and then body color black. This is nested inside. That is false. We need to put this on the outside to be syntactically correct. And finally, the following CSS is syntactically correct. They all pretty much say the same thing here. Border 1 pixel solid black, font family sans serif. That is true. So that is good. And we will see how we did. It's the end of the quiz. Want to make sure that all the questions were answered correctly, and they were. Right? Of course, I made up the answers here, so if I made a mistake, then they wouldn't, right? If you make the answer key, you know what it is. You can't go wrong, right? But anyway, that's the end of this video, the end of chapter 7, and signing off.